What's the difference between data architecture and data modeling? Do you need to model before you? I don't know.
So when you talk about data lakes, you have unstructured data coming from all sorts of places, but then we get into who's actually using it.
What proportion of your job is securing and versus maintaining the accuracy of the data? Guys, good evening. Welcome back to episode. We've done that many. We've actually forgotten. So we decided the producer decided we're not going to give this episode.
Kenny, it's a good thing we don't get paid by episode, isn't it?
No, we
should, paid at all.
But it's 20 something, and so thanks for staying with us. But of course, Daniel, the business of the podcast.
Again, well, what can I say? You know, the subscriber count keeps going up. So thank you to you all. Thank you to your friends, your family, whoever you're networking it to. We've so far given away, I think it's 25 umbrellas and 60 hats, couple of t-shirts, keyrings. So if you're interested, your friends and family are interested, you'd like to know a little bit more, please just pop us a message down below. You can see his email at infomatters.com. I've got it wrong, but it's there anyway. So ring the bell, subscribe. We're currently actually, because we're powered by intelligence.com, and due to the subject tonight, we're actually looking for a number of people. So you'll see it flash up in the box below. And I'll let Kenny introduce our guest for this evening.
Yes. Now, of course, a theme of the last 20-something episodes, of course, has been data. It's the new gold in this world, and we thought best to find somebody who can talk about data.
Only if it's AI data.
Well, it's always AI on data. Yeah, well, true, but you were using AI on the data. I know somebody that's obviously, and it's actually well known to the podcast for reasons
do we know him? Do we know him?
We do know him.
Of course we do.
Welcome to the show,
Ovi.
He was behind the camera.
Ovi,
good to see you. He parachuted into the secret bunker.
All the way from sunny Spain as well, I believe.
Absolutely. I believe it's raining there. Welcome to Scotland.
Cool. It is.
Glad to see we're getting a bit
But
more
luckily,
Scotland.
we've got Info Matter Podcast umbrellas.
Yay! And you can win one, lucky you. Now, we thought, Dan, we'd look at, data being the new goal, but we'd ask Ovi to decide to define for us how we manage data
tell us what you do
and how
first.
you do in your day job. But yes, that's plenty good stuff.
What do you do, Ovi?
So first of all, pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
More than welcome.
I've been here a few times just behind the cameras, but now is the first time that I'm
in front of the
camera.
Makeup!
I got a haircut just for this.
You did. You're looking good.
I didn't.
You look like a Portuguese snooker player. I don't think they have snooker in Portugal, but if they do, ring the bell.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm a data architect. I work with data, and it's one of the most interesting subjects that we're going to talk about tonight.
Sure.
Okay, so Kenny, you asked the
was just
first
going to
question,
say,
you take the honours.
Well, the first question, we decided to bring a bit more structure.
If we can do it, if the producer, if we can just have an alarm bell that rings in case anyone falls asleep, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll try and keep this
just joking. It's going to be an interesting
It is a fascinating subject because the world, of course, is run by data. Now, I spend a lot of time in my cybersecurity world securing data, but I imagine it needs to be shaped and, did we say architected? Is that a word?
That's totally a word.
Yeah, cool.
That's
and how do we go
you
about that typically? Or
you need to spend a lot of time on it. So basically,
it's going to be a short show.
It's going to be so where to start, man?
Here you go. What's the difference between data architecture and data modeling? Do you need to model before you? I don't know. You explain to us.
Data architecture talks about the whole, like the big picture, right? So data modeling is a part of it.
Okay, so let's go data architecture.
When you talk about data architecture, you talk about everything. You talk about data integration, data harmonization, data modeling. That's a part of it. Data governance, all of the data buzzwords.
So how would let's say, for example, we're all in similar industries. We all do not similar stuff because you're a data architect. I'm building platforms at the moment, the connectors that talk to other applications, etc. And obviously behind that, you've got databases, etc. Is that something data architecture is involved in terms of the database structure, the layers?
Yeah, exactly. So data architecture starts from the very beginning. You look at all your systems, what you want to integrate, what data you're trying to pull in. You have different source systems dealing with, let's say, sales data, financial data, customer data. So you want to bring all of that in, because the thing that you want to focus on most, what's the biggest problem around data in
everybody that touches it?
No, it's not maintenance.
It's crap.
No, exactly, it's crap.
It's always
data quality.
Data. Well, what you do? You do a dump of data.
Absolutely.
Data quality is the biggest problem that you have. It's been mentioned in the podcast here.
It's big theme.
Why is data quality a problem? Because your architecture is not done well enough.
Right.
So what you want to do is you actually want to take your time, have a good look at it. I know it may seem like maybe like a
Never-ending task.
Never-ending
Yeah, but
task.
the thing is, the never-ending task is the fact that we don't have clean data ever, which means that our tasks are never-ending as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If it was, I mean, like today we had, we got a dump out of, what is it, ISPBI or IPS, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's lots of blanks.
Yeah.
So that data's not clean to me.
Your data is all over the place. It's in different formats. It's dirty. It's not standardized.
Yeah.
So then, what you want to do is, first of all, you want to take a big look around it. You want to have good communication with everybody involved. You want to understand what the data means, what it represents, and you want to put it together so it actually brings value.
Sure. And of course, that bringing value, but surely. That's everything we try to get to is getting value out of the data we have. But surely, that's only good for the exercise you're doing at that point. You're never going to know every use case that everyone wants to do. So it's an ever evolving thing. So somebody will use this subset of data, which means that subset of data ages. So you always have you have a never-ending exercise of trying to make sure that the master data, there's a good phrase I heard somewhere recently, is all healthy and all that kind of, exactly. Thinking of them, right? So you constantly have to be looking at the data you hold, determining if it's all value, if not maybe deleting it or whatever it might be.
So again, we always talk about clean data.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, you work in an organization, you've worked with enterprise architects, you are one, you build the correct back end, and then you import shit legacy data from another company you've acquired. How do you filter out that shit, even though you've built it correctly?
You have to have several iterations. It's always live. Data is always live. It's changing. So you have to structure it. You use, industry-defined standards. You use frameworks.
Like the toilet.
The toilet. Yeah.
or just
a lot of it you just filter out. A lot of it you standardize. And I think one of the most important things to do around data is to pick your architectural framework that you want to work on. You have several use cases. So first of all, you have to decide, okay, what do I want to achieve?
Yeah.
Right.
Are we talking about reporting? Are we talking about feeding
transactional data? Because you've got retention
data
standards. You've got the financial periods of a week, a month, a year, 6 years, 20 years, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of that data that you gathered 10 years ago would have been it would have been accurate at the time.
Exactly.
It's historical data, so you don't need to maintain it. However, does that not
need
create
it for audit purposes, for example?
Right.
So it depends on what industry you work with.
If you're doing a migration project, project, you need it now.
Yeah.
You don't need 100,000, legacy Active Directory accounts that someone forgot to switch off for 90 days or keep paying. Yeah. Because then your wave planning goes to because we know how that
exactly.
So that goes. So when it comes down to, let's say you've built the perfect architecture with the appropriate teams, the appropriate infrastructure. Tell us about the modeling. Is that when you're doing more of the
so you start with
reporting
analysis
side of
tasks.
things?
You basically bring the data in from various sources. That's the integration part. So you have the data integration part. You have processes like ETL or ELT. So that's extract, transform, and load, or extract, load, and transform. And you're basically bringing the data in from various sources, and you bring it into your ecosystem, right? And then you have various frameworks that you work with. There are two main frameworks: the Kimball, that everybody has heard of.
I think that's something you read in ebook.
Everyone's heard of.
Oh, that's a Kindle, isn't it?
Kindle,
Kindle. Excuse me, my book doesn't work. It's a Kindle.
You have your Kimball, you have your Inman.
I've never met them.
A few of them.
Yeah.
And then you have like your hybrid, and everything is actually hybrid. There's no
everything's hybrid these days, from a PAS to a SAS to an iPass.
I was going to say, and everyone loves an acronym, right? And actually, you mentioned governance. So I imagine the more somebody said to me years ago, we create more data every day than ever existed before. That sounds a little bit grand,
especially with data.
But then AI, there's that phrase again. I imagine that could be possible. I imagine there are certain governance obligations for historic data, for the active data, so things that you've had but need to keep, things that you have and use every day. What kind of governance is bestowed upon you when you have this role of managing data?
Let's knight the fucker.
Yeah, I know.
You really need to take care of what data you're working with, because a lot of the data nowadays, it's maybe it's private information. So maybe it's very sensitive information, like financial information, maybe it's customer information.
Right.
So you really need to think what your data represents, what data you can share, and this ties back into security as well.
Yeah.
Because
most of my life,
Exactly.
So let's perfect world, never
Yeah.
perfect. What are the biggest challenges you face within an organization of ensuring that as a data architect that your proposed methods are followed?
Mm-hmm.
And the right data is brought in, and
Yes,
not from a shit.
That's a tough one. That's a tough
Yeah.
one.
Welcome to the show.
You didn't think it was going to be plain sailing.
I didn't think I'd come up with that.
I imagine.
So you're not going to get an answer.
I'm
just go around. There's
Who's
no-
Ovi?
I was going to help you out along the lines of thinking. I imagine that when you have this data that keeps on growing, you've got to secure it. You've got data in transit obligations, data at rest obligations, which
Obviously.
all that kind of stuff. And I imagine you have a constant control and review of how secure that data is. You'll have GDPR obligations in the EU and the equivalent in the US or whatever else. What proportion of your job is securing and versus maintaining the accuracy of the data? Is it?
The maintaining of the accuracy, I would say it's more relevant here. So
Right.
the securing part, you have other teams that deal more about the securing part.
Right.
So information security, data security is dealt by our security team.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Sure.
So they sit on the periphery helping. They do their
Exactly.
part, you do your part. So
Exactly.
and you
So-
get,
Well, I mean, you can ring fence all the data, but the data is shit. That's your problem.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's my problem. My problem is making sure that the data that you're seeing actually brings value.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in the end, you have use cases for data. Where does it go? Does it go into reporting? Does it go into? At the end, it has to be relevant. It has to bring value.
Yeah.
So then, if you're talking about reporting, then the people taking the decisions that are consuming data through the BI solutions,
course.
they need to make sure that they're actually looking at the right data.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's like
I guess they got to trust it, right? It's
They
a
have
bit
to
responsibility.
trust
Well, if you're looking at the flight patterns of Taylor Swift, then you're looking at the wrong data, aren't you?
there you go.
I don't know why that came to mind. She's playing in Liverpool tonight, I think.
Yeah, she was over in Edinburgh
That's
few
right.
nights ago. Exactly.
Are you a Swiftie, Kenny?
No.
Are you a Swiftie, Ovi?
I'm not.
I've dated her.
Good boy. So did I before you. Ha ha.
in his
Ring that bell.
I noticed.
I noticed. A baggy trumpet. And the data's correct.
Moving on. and I one other question, of course, everyone with data being the new goal, we're always keen to try and monetize that. I'm thinking more maybe of the social media worlds where people try and monetize their views and their audiences and all that kind of stuff. We do a degree of that on the podcast.
Thank you, YouTube.
Thank you, welcome. Yes, exactly. Does monetizing of the data in your world, does that feature heavily, or is it purely an internal consumption?
Not in my world. So data
Okay.
monetization is a hot topic.
Yeah.
Because obviously data is gold.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Why do you think WhatsApp sold for as much as it did?
Yeah.
Why do you think Instagram is worth as much as
19
it did? In the
billion?
end,
Was it
yeah.
19 billion? Yeah.
There's a lot, yeah.
Data is valuable. You've
Drops
seen
on bills.
examples. You've seen all sorts of companies that their valuation comes from the data that they own,
Yeah,
that they
exactly.
have, and what they use it for. The reason that you have EU standards and GDPR and all of that is just to ensure that people's data is being kept safe and not used against them.
Exactly.
So-
And actually thinking of WhatsApp, everyone said, well, how can it be valued at 19 billion as it was at the time?
That's
when
years ago,
WhatsApp's
yeah.
free, the account's free, but it's free to the consumer, but the 19 billions in the user base, so they acquire the users.
There
and
you go.
the-
Well, I
Exactly.
got another one
Data is
this morning,
important.
like FedEx has delivered your parcel. I'm like, what did they order? Dink. Autofill your, you bought a giant dildo for £1 million. I'm like, yeah, thanks, WhatsApp. The data was incorrect.
Phishing and all that kind of jazz.
But how does we're talking your data, then you've got volumes of data.
Yeah.
And Kenny came up with a statistic before that we generate more data.
We generate
than-
more data every day than ever existed ever before.
So you've got the example of data lakes now, your Splunks, your Siemens, what
Yeah.
have you. So it's just getting bigger and bigger. There's more and more and more of it.
Yeah.
How
And
do
what
you-
do you do with it? Why is it relevant?
Yeah.
How do you make sense?
So it's all about your
all this
filters and you can
data?
talk, right?
Exactly. So when you talk about data lakes, you have unstructured data coming from all sorts of places,
Yeah.
but then we get into who's actually using it. So you have your data scientists which
Oh.
We don't have one of those, Mr. Producer, do we?
Yeah, can you bring us a white lab coat next time? Oh, look, I've found a G.
Data scientist. Sounds fascinating.
Sorry,
data
carry on.
scientist, yeah. So data scientist, what do? They actually look at high volumes of data. So when you have your unstructured data in your data lakes, this is where the data scientists look into and start to analyze and start to have like all these complicated programming languages or pseudo programming languages, and they start to see patterns. They start to work with that data.
So they look at trends and and decide what those trends are telling them, that sort of stuff. And I imagine in just thinking of that, particularly relevant to some of the work I'm doing right now, data manipulation in a cyber sense it poses a big threat. So if anyone was to get access to those data, they can misguide or significant share prices, for instance, massive.
Are we going to throw AI in here as well?
Well, there we go. I mean, I imagine AI is all
tell
over
us
that.
Tell us about your love for AI within
There's a theme on the podcast where AI always creeps in about 17
But this
minutes
hasn't come in
in
yet in terms of what you do in terms of data architecture, data modeling, and how AI fits into that. I know it comes into the reporting game for the consumer. For me, you can, but your side, which is more of the back end side, isn't it?
AI probably is not at the point yet to be actually that accurate when it comes into the part before the reporting part. So right now, AI, you can start to use it. It's like a good guideline,
right?
But it doesn't.
Does that thing called hallucinating, if I remember rightly, where it goes off?
It just looks out of those lakes,
brain fart, but it doesn't come up with anything sensible.
Kenny, it looks out of those lakes and goes, "Fuck you." I'm a mushrooms, bitch. There's too much data, man.
It starts hallucinating.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to picture technology
just
as like how
as
you
a
look at
person
it and just
almost.
go, no.
And I imagine, AI a lot of the time takes on a persona, right? So you've got Siri and all the rest of it on our phones and Alexa. I won't say Alexa on the podcast because Alexa will light up.
Alexa.
Hi, Alexa.
What's the weather today in Pittsburgh?
Hey, Siri.
But see, even for AI, you need to feed it in
Yes.
some data models that it's able to
Start.
work
Yeah,
with
I see.
better.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Because AI is not something that you can just release and then it will start to figure out how to do things.
If you look at, I mean, we know that in the podcast. You don't just plug it in and let it run amok. I think we'd find that'd be a really bad idea. You have to train these things, right?
Exactly.
So but you have to kind of cut them loose in the data set.
So the data that you train it on needs to be architected.
Can you imagine a Facebook AI? He'd be just full of nonsense.
My next question was going to be, how do you stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah.
When AI can make you more efficient, regardless, because it's you have platforms, you have applications, whatever you've got, it's built on standards, it's provided by companies. So tell the AI to do that, you monitor it, you feed it. How do you control
AI is
that?
not yet the driving force. So right now AI is still a companion.
Okay.
Right. It may.
I think it should be anyway, to be honest.
But it's not the source of truth. So when you really are very interested in having the accuracy and to have trustable data, you still need fleshy humans to make sure that whatever you're doing there, you communicate with other people that actually know the data. But so you cannot trust it fully yet.
And so you're comfortable. I mean, rightly or wrongly.
Well, Tom Cruise was wrongly accused of murder because of AI in Minority Report, so they need to get it right.
Yeah, and there are these films that have called out this. And as a degree, you've seen the Black Mirror TV series. They called somebody somewhere has been in the future and come back and went, "I'm going to make a TV show and show you fuckers what's coming."
And he lives in a pyramid.
Yeah, on the moon or something like that. And then there was another TV show recently on Netflix about if we unplug the internet, how fucked our lives will be. I mean, that's probably another conversation. I imagine one of the biggest threats I think that I have wanted to get your opinion on was that the government in the UK many years ago was told to stop building databases on people, stop gathering data because people were being wrongly profiled on their
just sell them to Facebook.
on their milk choices and all that kind of stuff. And then there was the Cambridge Analytica nonsense that skewed all the US politics and that sort of stuff. Surely there comes a point where is there a point of having too much data? Should we start kind of trimming back, or from a business sense is more better?
It's unavoidable to have too much data. So right now
you turn up at work, you create data, right?
Yeah. You create data. So much data is just gathered around. Every system just generates so much data. So that's why a few years ago, the big thing was big data.
Right. Yeah.
You had just so much data, and what do you do with it? You need to figure out how to
and how
bring
do
some value.
and how do you, what would it, so in your typical project or delivery, how would you go about doing
How
that?
would you work out what to keep?
I cannot really talk about that.
Hey, you're not from NASA. You're fine.
No,
The FBI
no,
not
five.
knocking at the
There's
door.
nobody looking. Come
Well,
on,
I
give
mean,
us
I don't know. It always pops up. We had a guest on some time back from
Yeah.
Microsoft talking about using AI in the retail industry.
Oh, that was good.
So I actually went on 3 days ago to get a soundbar from the said retailer,
Yeah.
Alza. And I walked there and nothing flashed up. And I picked up the box and walked 3 kilometres home. And I'm like, I wish they'd called me a fucking taxi. So AI, get working with the Ubers of the world.
This is the
what
point.
happens. This is the value that so the pros and the cons, right?
Yeah.
The pros are that it can help your life improve it in so many ways. The cons are that it can change your life in so many ways. So if you look at one of the worst examples, maybe from some points of view, was Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah,
what
wasn't
they
that
did
the
with
Meta
data.
or Facebook?
Yeah, they
data.
started data mining a bunch of
Data
stuff
mining,
and
that's
started
right, yeah.
influencing
Yeah.
the elections.
And influencing. So that's all around data. So that's why you need to be careful what you do with your data.
Yeah, because maybe if the AI said, Danny's been looking for a soundbar, but he's not getting a soundbar because he needs a Hoover, and you walked out with a Hoover, you'd be pretty.
I think I
pepper.
walked in
if you went to Alza, ordered a soundbar, and a Hoover
Now, that's
turned
the
up.
crazy thing. So I walked in for a USB plug, and then I saw a Dyson Hoover.
And I waved at you.
A Dyson Hoover, and I love them, but they're like €1,000. And then I walked out with a soundbar that looked like a giant tuba. So I went in for this. I had to cross all the way across the bridge, go through a park, and then I got home, and then there was no optical cable in there. So yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, and then your wife goes, I thought you went for a Hoover. And you went, yeah. That's going.
I suppose you could Hoover with it if you wrapped it in sellotape and picked up the dust with
suspect
it.
that's not what you had in mind, but there we go.
So Kenny, you're one of your question that you always like. Your two questions. You're good and bad.
I always like to ask our guests, two things. One perhaps negative, but certainly one positive for the future. So. Maybe on the premise of negatively, what would you say is the big no-no for data collection and manipulation and all that kind of good stuff or architecture?
Architecture.
So the sheer amount of data that is being collected nowadays, you can do so many things with it, and
no, not always for good.
Exactly, and that's the biggest problem. So as we were just saying with some of the examples, it can be used against you, it can be used for you, but at the end, you have to have some ethics in how you use the data.
So which just creates the question: how do you stop? Leading on from Kenny's question, there's so much data being created every day, and how much data is good data, but it keeps growing and it keeps growing. So how it's going to get to a point where you're like, well. What
else do you need to know?
How do you narrow it down so it's valuable to the company, valuable to the client, valuable?
Honestly, most of it is junk.
I was about to say what percentage is mince?
Right.
So a lot of it you collect
data,
it. And
if you look at meaningful data, most of it is just junk. Honestly,
right.
I mean, behavioural data is good. So Kenny logs into his Outlook in the morning and then logs out. Danny logs in 150 times a day because he's travelling the world. That's behavioural.
Behavioural data, and like I said, as soon as you arrive at work or go shopping, you create data, which I guess leads me to, and I'm going to draw on our guest a few weeks back who talked about a positive retail experience with data, and to a degree it is profiling, but it's positive profiling. So, Kenny or Danny or Ovi are going to go shopping and you're going to buy a Hoover, a kettle, and a car, but you do some googling beforehand. For those that haven't watched, we'll put a link to that show. It's quite good, quite interesting, and it uses in a positive way. Essentially you're browsing data and it creates various IDs and a method to track so that when you go to the store, I think that's positive.
That's great data. For the retailer, it saves you time in the shop.
That's what you do for good data correlation. So you're able to correlate your search history with your interests, with what
for a positive gain.
I mean, if you walk in, you come out with a TV and a giant, then you're in the wrong store.
Well, or the spontaneous marketing when you go, that impulse buying thing works. But I was going to ask you, Ovi, so with that's my view of a positive going forward. So with all this data, what would your view be on a big fat positive that can benefit the consumer or business?
Health, for example. So if you talk about healthcare, imagine all the information that you may get from the pharmaceutical industry, from the health industry. all that information was all over the place. So imagine you get to the point that you can take all this data, integrate it in, and you can find new ways of curing people.
Quicker ways, yeah.
Kenny,
What was in the news the other day, and I think it was actually in Scotland, they were saying about blood reserves for...
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I know it's from a cyber attack, but that information is...
Well, the absence of the information created a cyber attack had rendered... a health authority where they couldn't work out people's blood type or their prescription history and all that kind of stuff, which indirectly indicates they were highly dependent on the profiles of the patients, as they should be, but people, they put a need for blood. And we did say at the time it wouldn't be long before the likes of cyber threats started to risk lives, and that was my point. One thing I do like, and it's a bit of a challenge because people are very sensitive about their health data, and I don't know if, and you mentioned ethical earlier, if we're in the world where these big pharma companies are as ethical as they need to be. But if we could get to a point where all this kind of big data started to better forecast health, the treatments for health, or offset risk for cancer or against cancer, that sort of stuff, I think that would be genius.
Yeah, so far you can only hope that the companies are doing what they should be doing with the data. Yeah. But imagine...
Tell us.
What are they not doing? Maybe we can find something.
NDA's under the table.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, but imagine a world that you can use AI, for example, to put all this data together. You use your architectural principles to clean it, to model it, to put it together, to create all your conceptual models, to figure out what's relevant, what's not relevant, correlated with age groups, with locations, and you put that all together,
and then you model a treatment plan. I mean, it might just be vitamins, or it could be nothing. But if you're a smoker, then you're going to be right.
But it's just weird, because we all work, I'm not naming names, but we all work in big corporations. So with the more data, does that have a reliance on more infrastructure and more people to manage it? Or is it just, as you just say, it's filters and bin? But surely you have to, it's exponential.
It's creating jobs or that sort of stuff.
That's the reason that it's one of the biggest industries.
Wow. So you're safe for life?
Yes.
Till AI.
I've seen his terrace in Spain.
Yeah, I was about to say. It actually just occurred to me if to get an AI health doctor, you get an appointment faster than you would in the fucking UK.
You do now, call the NHS in the UK. Fuck off.
Can you forecast being sick, please? Which is I guess a big. If you could talk to, and I'm sure there's not so much a deep fake, but a real doc that you can talk to in AI terms, and it'll in the background pull up your profile and go, yeah, I see you chicken last night, and get off the pizza, you fat shit, and then all that kind of stuff.
Deirdre, Bob.
Well, exactly. And you get an appointment faster. God forbid, you'd probably get a prescription faster if that's what you needed. But
so data's growing.
Yeah.
So the need for the people to manage, to monitor, and deliver that data.
I like particularly the health benefits. Retail benefits, not as big a need, but certainly in health.
No, at the end of the day, what's more important. And
I don't know. To you, probably getting a new TV or Hoover. To someone else, getting the tablets on time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you have to be healthy to watch it.
Actually, really good. True. You can't watch a good TV if you're dead. That'd be pretty shit.
Actually, the sounds like.
And actually, I was going to say, the size of your soundbar, they probably can hear it. Exactly. Listen, just to wrap this up, we're getting to that magical time where time does fly, obviously, as we know, and we talk about a bunch of stuff here in the Secret Bunker. I think AI is always featured, security of information is always featured, but it's good to hear from an expert on the ways that data is going to be the new.
Where do you see it going? How do you see it improving, getting better with all these things expanding?
I'm actually very curious to see what's going to happen because the existing data models that we have, the existing ways that we work with data hasn't really changed.
I was going to ask that, because you're presenting results. There's your dashboard. It's all coming from data. So it's how you're accelerating that data to get it.
There hasn't been any big things coming up in the world of data architecture more than the infrastructure.
I was about to say.
By the way, for our viewers out there, he really means it's exciting.
It's exciting. Yeah. I was about to say it's one of these things, but I'm going back to my IT days, and I just think that's going to run out of disk space. Right. Exactly. Well, I've got nowhere to put it. Right.
Kenny's mum, if you're watching, the internet goes at 155 miles an hour.
I knew my mum. My mother got some.
Love you, Beryl.
She got some new in on it all day. She goes, it's really good, really fast, 150 miles an hour. I spat my coffee everywhere. It's brilliant.
But imagine you have bigger data and you have smarter ways to analyze it, but then there in the middle, the architecture part, it's still kind of what it was.
Yeah, it comes down to that core, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Transactional databases, you have analytical databases, but there's no real, something a new spark
I
so
see.
I'm really curious how AI and how
So AI might be the spark.
yeah, for example, because it may come with recommendations. It may kind of guide
good,
you
right.
to new ways of.
You can just watch it running around in circles while you eat your Raffaello cake, smoking a cigar on your own.
Yeah, waiting on your health to be or your
Because
prescription.
it's always the case. Technology, is going at such a pace.
Yeah.
Things are growing like this, and people are, scrabbling around trying to get that data as quick as they can now because there's too much of it. Yeah. So do you see? It just seems to like stalemate itself. That everything's.
I mean, maybe AI would bring out some gems from the. If it's 80% shit, then maybe AI can do something to make it better. And there is some real gems, dare we say, in healthcare or retail benefits, whatever it might be. We can see, I guess. Yeah, We shall wrap it up for now, Brother Daniel, Brother Ovi. Well, thank you very much for offering.
Well, on that note,
watching.
again, thank you to Stelligence.com that power this podcast. Info matters. Down below, ring the bell, subscribe, tell your friends, win an umbrella, win a hat, and
Any of the above, exactly.
maybe even a poncho. If you have a Mexican
we
evening.
realise there's a lot of rain in the world.
You never know.
Right
And if you go to Extelligence.com, you'll see recent job vacancies, advice, blogs. Head over there. Tell your friends, tell your family, and thanks for joining us all again. Again, thank you, Ovi, for joining the show.
Absolute pleasure.
Like,
we'll see you guys next
See you next time.
Take care, guys.
Rock and roll.